work.
The rest of the league in its history has 4.
Wow.
She is Steph Curry, but with kind of a Michael Jordan mindset. All business, all basketball, has no opinion or comment on the contract.
That comparison is doing a lot of work. Steph Curry's range, Michael Jordan's mentality, and almost none of the public drama. But the bigger question is why that contrast matters so much to the WNBA right now.
The WNBA is dealing with a lot of controversy and a lot of social conversation, and Enes Kanter and Royce White, former NBA guys, are trolling. And I do think the league could use better leadership. It feels like they're always reacting instead of proactive. But it's interesting. There is a singular reason that the league is now in a much better spot financially. And that reason is Caitlin Clark,
and that is where Colin Cowherd goes straight for the nerve. His argument is not simply that Caitlin Clark is the league's biggest star. He is saying the entire financial trajectory of the WNBA changed because one player arrived with an audience the league had never been able to manufacture on its own. You can agree with that framing or think it gives Clark too much credit. But you cannot understand this debate without understanding the scale of the change. Before Clark entered the league, the WNBA had stars, champions, Olympic legends, MVPs, personalities, and rivalries. What it did not have was one active player capable of turning ordinary regular season games into national events before the opening tip. And that creates a completely different responsibility for the league. Because once millions of casual fans arrive through one doorway, your job is not to pretend every doorway is equally important. Your job is to convince those people there are 10 more reasons to stay after they walk through it. That is the part of Cowherd's argument that becomes much more interesting later, because this is not really about whether the WNBA should praise Caitlin Clark more. The uncomfortable question is whether the league understands what kind of opportunity it has been handed.
Controversies. The Fever offense.
And while to Caitlin Clark's credit, while the other Caitlin Clark, I'm sure she's on Twitter. She just holds back from engaging, right? I'm sure she's on Instagram. She just holds back from engaging. Angel Reese always posting on Twitter. Dejanay Carrington always posting on Threads. Natasha Cloud on Threads. Brianna Turner going into back and forths. Dearica Hamby just said, if somebody punches my daughter, I'm doing them much worse. In a league where players just seem not be able to help themselves going on Twitter and Instagram and begging for attention, begging.
Now look at the contrast he is drawing. Clark's public strategy is almost aggressively boring. Basketball, teammates, games. Next question. Meanwhile, some of the loudest WNBA conversations regularly have nothing to do with what happened between the lines. Players argue online. Former players jump into disputes. Political commentary gets attached to basketball commentary. People who barely watch the game start fighting over what somebody posted. None of that automatically makes the league unhealthy. Athletes are people. They have opinions, and they are allowed to use social media like everybody else. The issue is what happens when the sideshow becomes easier to find than the basketball. That is especially dangerous when your biggest attraction appears to be doing the opposite. Clark does not need to win a Twitter argument to dominate the conversation. She can produce one absurd pass, hit a deep three, put up a monster scoring night, and suddenly everybody is talking about the game itself. That is an incredibly valuable position for a sports league. You have one star whose controversy is mostly generated around her rather than by her. Think about that difference. The WNBA does not need Clark to become louder. It needs to become better at building around the attention she already generates. And yet that attention keeps getting dragged into arguments about culture, race, politics, resentment, officiating, media agendas, and whether certain players supposedly receive too much coverage. That is where the tension starts. Because the player attracting the audience is behaving like a traditional franchise superstar, while the ecosystem around her keeps operating like every discussion has to become something bigger than basketball.
To be noticed, Caitlin Clark doesn't do that.
Is not only number 1 in this league at 97 a game, it's the best offense in league history because of Caitlin Clark. So with all this drama and nonsense around her, Caitlin Clark, number 1 in assists, number 3 in scoring, best offense in league history, greatest shooting range in league history. She's not driving the controversy like Michael Jordan.
This is the strongest part of Cowherd's case because now we are finally talking about the product. The clip points to Clark's scoring, passing, shooting range, and Indiana's offensive success. Those are the things the WNBA can actually sell without getting trapped inside another ideological argument. A logo 3 is understandable in every language. A transition pass through 2 defenders does not require a panel discussion. A packed arena watching somebody chase another huge night is exactly the kind of television sports leagues spend decades trying to create. And there is another layer here that matters. Clark's appeal is not only that she can score, plenty of players can score. It is that the way she plays creates anticipation before the possession even develops. When she crosses half court, people are already watching differently. The defense has to extend, help defenders start leaning, teammates have more space. Every possession contains the possibility of something that ends up circulating online 5 minutes later. That is the Steph Curry part of the comparison. Curry changed where viewers expected a shot to become dangerous. Clark produces some of the same visual tension. The defense cannot relax at a distance that used to feel safe. But Cowherd adds Michael Jordan for a different reason. Not because Clark plays like Jordan. She obviously does not. He is talking about presentation. Serious, competitive, commercially clean. The performance becomes the statement. That combination is almost tailor-made for a league trying to grow, which makes what comes next much more complicated.
And ask yourself, is the controversy bad? I know what you're thinking. Oh, it's terrible. Okay. Well, if you want to climb Everest, there's going to be some storms at the top. The path to growth is always through discomfort. When did the UFC explode? Conor McGregor. They have squeezed every ounce of sweat out of his career.
Cowherd now makes the argument a lot of people hate hearing. Controversy itself is not necessarily bad for business. And historically, he has a point. Sports do not grow because everybody agrees. They grow because people care enough to choose sides. Conor McGregor did not become one of the UFC's biggest attractions by being universally loved. He created emotional investment. People paid to watch him win, and other people paid because they desperately wanted to see him lose. That distinction matters. The WNBA does not need harmony. It needs stakes. A rivalry is good. Trash talk is good. A heel is good. A hero is good. Fans arguing about who is better is fantastic. What becomes dangerous is controversy that disconnects people from the sport instead of pulling them deeper into it. If two teams dislike each other and viewers circle the rematch on the calendar, that is productive tension. If fans spend 3 days arguing about a social media post and never learn when those teams play again, the controversy generated attention but failed to convert it into sports fandom. That is the line the WNBA has to understand, and it is also why comparing every kind of controversy to McGregor can be misleading. McGregor's chaos usually ended with a date, an opponent, a weigh-in, and a fight people had to buy. The controversy pointed back toward the product. Can the WNBA say the same thing every time one of these arguments erupts? That is a much harder question.
That Khabib incident, if anything, that was the start of the end for Conor McGregor.
Earned, by the way. When I loved boxing, and arguably it was front page in American sports sections, when Muhammad Ali was a conscientious objector to the war.
Now Cowherd widens the lens all the way out to Muhammad Ali, and this is where the discussion becomes less about Clark specifically and more about how sports actually occupy culture. Ali was bigger than boxing because his significance could not be contained by boxing. But there is an important difference between a transcendent athlete generating cultural conversation and a league becoming dependent on cultural arguments for attention. Ali did not become important because boxing executives created controversy around him. He became important because he was an extraordinary fighter, with a personality and a worldview powerful enough to pull the entire sport into larger conversations. That order matters. The athletic greatness came with the gravity, and that is probably the safest blueprint for the WNBA too. Let Clark's games create the gravitational pull first, then let everybody argue about what it means. The league gets into trouble when the order reverses and the argument becomes the main event, while the basketball becomes supporting material, because casual fans are ruthless. They do not owe any league loyalty. If they show up expecting entertainment and instead feel like they are entering a permanent political debate, many of them will simply watch something else. The WNBA's opportunity is not to eliminate disagreement. That would be impossible and probably boring. The opportunity is to make sure the disagreement keeps returning to basketball. Who is better? Who got exposed? Who can stop Clark? Which defense finally figured Indiana out? Who deserves the MVP? Who owns the fourth quarter? Those arguments build leagues.
Yeah. Golden State. Stacked roster. Last dynasty. Adam Silver didn't like it at all. Literally changed the CBA. Patriots, Spygate, Deflategate. Dodgers dynasty, unfair, stacked, deferred payments.
And all those teams have top players of all time on their team. The Steph, Golden State, Tom Brady, Patriots, Shohei with the Dodgers.
College football and basketball ratings up, up, up. Last 3-4 years with NIL, transfer portal, the entire.
And this section gets closer to the real issue. Cowherd starts running through dynasties, salary cap battles, Patriots scandals, stacked teams, transfer portals, and all the familiar complaints fans make whenever a sport changes. Every major league eventually discovers the same truth. Outrage and popularity can exist at the same time. Sometimes they even feed each other. People complained about the Patriots while watching the Patriots. People complained about Golden State while tuning in to see whether anybody could beat Golden State. Fans complain about super teams, officiating, rule changes, and dynasties every season, then produce record engagement arguing about those exact things. So the existence of controversy around Clark is not proof that something is going wrong. In fact, some of it is evidence that something is finally going right. People care. The WNBA spent years asking why the broader sports audience did not pay enough attention. Now attention has arrived, and attention is messy. New fans bring new expectations. Old fans become protective of the league they followed before the explosion. Players who spent years building careers suddenly find themselves discussed relative to a second-year superstar. Media companies chase the name that generates the largest audience. Every one of those forces creates friction. That part was inevitable. The question is whether leadership can channel that friction. Because when a superstar transforms the scale of the business, pretending nothing has changed is not fairness, it is bad management. Michael Jordan was not treated like the 12th most important player in the NBA, because executives were worried Charles Barkley might feel disrespected. Tiger Woods was not hidden in the middle of a broadcast, because golf wanted equal camera time. Serena Williams was not marketed like an anonymous participant when she became appointment television. Successful leagues identify the engine and build around it. Then, critically, they use that engine to pull everybody else forward. That second step is where this becomes a WNBA leadership story, rather than just another Clark debate.
So I keep hearing about FIFA. We just had World Cup smashed the ratings, the World Cup, the entire time. Rigged, Argentina, getting every break. This thing looks rigged. Argentina, Messi, the popular team getting the calls, the champions going for a repeat. In FIFA, by the way, there's been claims of corruption forever. The Olympics, actually very profitable last time for NBC. Hasn't IOC, to many critics, always been sort of, The
World Cup example makes the same point from another direction. Fans spent an entire tournament arguing about officiating, favorable calls, Argentina, Lionel Messi, and whether the biggest story was being helped toward a perfect ending. What did those arguments do? They made people watch the next match. That is the conversion mechanism. Sports controversy becomes commercially valuable when it creates anticipation. The WNBA has more than enough raw material to do that right now. Clark has rivals. Indiana has teams that clearly want to make every possession physical. There are young stars entering the league who will naturally be compared with her. There are veteran players who do not want the entire sport reduced to one name. There are coaches trying different defensive coverages to slow her down. That is television. Imagine how much stronger the product becomes when those ideas are packaged intentionally instead of discovered accidentally through social media warfare. Promote the matchup. Show the previous hard foul. Show the last 30-point performance. Show the defender who believes she can contain Clark. Show the coach changing the scheme. Show the standings consequences. Then play basketball. That is how the NFL turns a random Sunday afternoon into an event. It creates a story the audience can understand before kickoff. And this is where criticism of the WNBA's media ecosystem has some merit. When a player becomes culturally relevant, simply airing her game is the minimum requirement. The real growth comes from teaching casual viewers why the next game matters before it begins.
It is what it is. CC in the WNBA is like watching Tiger enter the PGA or Serena enter tennis, but in this case, since women have so many different nuances in how to cover their sports, there's nothing like the discourse around CC. It's wild to witness. Very, very point.
Tiger Woods and Serena Williams are probably much cleaner comparisons than McGregor because they expose the real challenge facing the WNBA. When a transformative athlete enters an established sport, everybody around that sport has to adjust. Television coverage changes. Ticket prices change. Security changes. Scheduling changes. Sponsors change. Journalists who barely covered the sport suddenly arrive. Fans who cannot name 5 other players suddenly have loud opinions about everything. That can feel insulting to the people who were already there. Imagine spending a decade following a league, supporting its stars and defending its legitimacy, then watching somebody new arrive and instantly receive more national attention than almost everyone who came before. Of course that creates resentment, but resentment does not change the economics. A league cannot punish a breakthrough athlete for breaking through too dramatically. It has to exploit the breakthrough while expanding the audience's knowledge of everybody else. Tiger coverage eventually introduced millions of viewers to Phil Mickelson, Ernie Els, Vijay Singh, and an entire generation of golfers, because those players became part of the Tiger story. Serena's dominance made opponents matter, because beating Serena meant something. That is the opportunity sitting in front of the WNBA. Instead of asking whether Clark receives too much attention, ask how many other players can become more famous by competing against her. That is a radically different mindset. Scarcity says Clark is taking coverage away from everybody. Growth says Clark is creating coverage that did not previously exist. If growth is the goal, the second mindset is the useful one.
He is statistically having the greatest season by a point guard in WNBA history, while leading the best offensive team in league history. Despite having a middle-of-the-road coach, Steph is a defensive-minded coach. She does not understand modern.
And now we finally arrive at the payoff Cowherd has been building toward. The reason his argument lands is not simply popularity. It is the combination of popularity and production. Celebrity without performance burns out. If Clark were generating massive television audiences while playing average basketball, eventually the novelty would fade, and the league would face a serious marketing problem. But if the performance keeps reinforcing the attention, the cycle becomes self-sustaining. A big game creates highlights. Highlights create conversation. Conversation creates anticipation. Anticipation creates ratings. Ratings create better television windows and larger sponsorship opportunities. Those opportunities create more investment. That investment raises the profile of everyone competing in the same league. This is why the WNBA's most important decision is not whether it should publicly declare Caitlin Clark the face of the league. That argument is almost cosmetic. The real decision is whether league leadership is willing to organize the business around the reality viewers have already created. Because audiences vote with attention, they do not fill out fairness surveys before choosing a game. If one player consistently drives disproportionate interest, smart sports organizations do not fight that behavior. They study it. Why do casual viewers respond to her? Is it the deep shooting? The passing, the college following, the rivalries, the style, the personalities around her? Then you take those ingredients and use them to make the entire league easier to follow. That is the answer sitting underneath Cowherd's rant. Embracing Clark does not mean disrespecting everybody else. Done correctly, it means using her as the bridge between an enormous casual audience and the rest of the WNBA. And if the league fails to build that bridge while the attention is this intense, there is no guarantee the same opportunity comes twice.
Colin's right on this one. Caitlin Clark is all basketball, no sideshows. In a league that keeps finding new ways to step on rakes, she's the one person who just shows up and plays. That's exactly what they should be selling.
That comment gets right to the brand difference. Clark's biggest advantage may not be that she avoids controversy completely. Nobody at her level can control that. Her advantage is that she rarely needs controversy to remain relevant. That gives the WNBA something remarkably clean to market. When the surrounding conversation becomes exhausting, there is always a reset button available. Show the basketball, and think about how useful that is for sponsors, for broadcasters, for families taking children to games, for new fans who do not understand the league's internal history. Clark is easy to explain. She shoots from absurd distances. She sees passing windows other players do not see. Defenses load up against her. Crowds react when she touches the ball. That is the pitch. You do not need a 30-minute history lesson to understand why somebody might want to watch. The danger is allowing every secondary controversy to become so dominant that this basic appeal gets buried. That does not mean reporters should stop covering uncomfortable stories. It does not mean players should stop speaking. And it certainly does not mean criticism of Clark should disappear. Superstars get criticized more, not less. But there is a difference between healthy scrutiny and an ecosystem that seems weirdly uncomfortable with its own breakout star. The NBA never required LeBron James to be universally loved before marketing him. The NFL does not wait for everybody to agree about Patrick Mahomes. The business understands that attention itself is an asset. The WNBA has to become equally comfortable with that reality.
Now, in terms of comparisons, I've always said that she's Steve Nash if he was aggressive. She's Steve Nash if Steve Nash also had some I'm going to hunt my shot in him. Steve Nash refused to shoot at times. He would much rather set up Amari, or set up Sean Marion, or set up Joe Johnson, or set up Quentin Richardson, set up James Johnson. Set up Jim Jackson. Sheesh, yeah. Dating myself.
The Steve Nash comparison actually adds another interesting layer because it moves the conversation away from celebrity and back toward basketball identity. Nash was a system accelerator. He manipulated tempo, space, and angles, and entire offenses seemed to breathe differently when he was controlling them. Clark has some of that same quality. The aggressive difference mentioned in the clip matters because she is constantly forcing defenders to answer two questions at once. Are you taking away the shot, or are you taking away the pass? Commit too high and she can create a numbers advantage behind you. Drop too far and the range becomes a problem. Send extra help and somebody else receives space. That is what makes a star valuable beyond the box score. She changes the geometry for everybody. And this is where the Clark conversation sometimes becomes embarrassingly shallow. People reduce everything to whether she scored enough, whether somebody else shot a higher percentage, whether another guard had a better night, or whether one comparison is technically perfect. None of these comparisons are perfect. She is not Steph Curry. She is not Michael Jordan. She is not Steve Nash. She is Caitlin Clark. The useful part is identifying what characteristics make the comparison understandable. Curry explains the range and gravitational pull. Jordan explains the ruthless basketball-first public image Cowherd is describing. Nash explains the playmaking and possession control. Put those pieces together and you understand why the viewing experience feels different, and that viewing experience is what the WNBA ultimately has to sell. Not internet tribalism, not resentment, not endless arguments over whether people are allowed to call somebody the face of the league. The actual feeling viewers get when something could happen from 30 feet away. That is the product.
She's Steve Nash if Steve Nash was aggressive. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video, hype the video, subscribe to the channel. That means so much to me. Colin Cowherd, Steph Curry meets Michael Jordan.
So now the choice is pretty simple. You can look at everything surrounding Caitlin Clark and decide the WNBA has a controversy problem. Or you can decide the league has an attention opportunity that it still has not fully learned how to control. Those are not the same diagnosis. If the problem is controversy, the instinct is to quiet everything down, avoid favoritism, and hope every conversation becomes more comfortable. If the opportunity is attention, the strategy changes completely. You build rivalries. You create better storytelling around the games. You turn opponents into recognizable characters. You make viewers understand why tonight matters more than last Tuesday. You let people root for Clark. You let people root against Clark. You let other stars challenge her. And then you make absolutely certain all of that emotional energy ends with people watching basketball. Because Cowherd's broader point is difficult to dismiss. Major sports have almost never reached their biggest moments by becoming quieter. They grow when somebody arrives who forces casual people to care. The WNBA finally has that person. The league does not have to worship her. It does not have to protect her from criticism. It does not have to pretend every controversy around her is somebody else's fault. It simply has to recognize what the audience has already recognized. A rare athlete has changed the scale of the conversation. Now the burden shifts to everybody running the sport. Can they convert one superstar's gravity into permanent growth for an entire league? Or will they spend the most valuable window in WNBA history arguing about whether that gravity is fair? That is the real debate. So pick a side. Should the WNBA openly build its growth strategy around Caitlin Clark while the opportunity is here? Or should the league deliberately spread the spotlight, even if that means leaving some of the Clark boom on the table? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit like if you want more breakdowns like this. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.